The city never sleeps. Its heart beats in honking horns, flashing lights, and hurried footsteps. But beneath that mechanical rhythm, something softer was stirring, something forgotten. In the shadow of a cracked sidewalk and amid the shuffle of strangers who never looked down, a tiny soul was left to freeze and fade. A newborn puppy, barely the size of a human hand, sat trembling in a torn cardboard box, his cries lost in the roar of urban chaos. No one saw him. No one paused until she did. Ginger, an orange tabby with fur like autumn fire, was padding along the alley on her daily route, a simple walk she took every morning outside the apartment she shared with her loving humans. But this morning was different. This morning, the air held something heavy, a calling. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Her ears twitched, her body froze. A faint, desperate whimper floated through the noise. With feline grace and the sacred intuition that only mothers possess, Ginger turned and stepped toward the sound. She crept closer, her eyes catching the sight that made her soul stir, a shivering, wide-eyed puppy, all alone in a cardboard cradle of sorrow. For a heartbeat, the city held its breath. And in that stillness, the wild answered the cry of the abandoned. In that moment, the animal rescue began, but not the kind that humans orchestrate. This was instinct. This was divine. This was a mother's heart, awakened by the cry of one not her own. Her paws gently pressed against the cold pavement as she climbed into the box, curled around the frightened pup, and let her warmth become his salvation. That single act, a cat embracing a dog, was more than nature, it was a miracle. A touching animal story written not in words, but in fur, in heartbeat, in survival. The puppy stopped crying. His tiny body relaxed. And Ginger, the city cat, held him as if he had always been hers. As morning turned into a golden afternoon, the sun began its journey higher into the sky, casting down rays that turned the box into an oven of cardboard and sweat. Ginger stayed with the puppy through it all, her body shielding him from the cruel bite of heat. She could have left, her kittens were waiting. But something stronger than instinct had taken root, a bond born from brokenness. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. She began to meow, softly at first, then louder, more desperate, calling out to the human world for help. But the street was alive with chaos, and no one listened. No one saw the miracle unfolding in a corner they didn't care to glance at. The orange cat's eyes searched the faces rushing by, but not one paused. And so with a breathless resolve, and a mother's courage, she stood up. Carefully, gently, she placed her teeth around the scruff of the puppy's neck, not to harm, but to carry, the way she carried her own. The cardboard box that had been the baby's prison was now left behind as Ginger took the first step of a journey that would rewrite destinies. Her little paws padded steadily along the cracked cement, her head held high, though the weight in her mouth was heavy. Her heart beat with purpose. It was only a few blocks, but to her it was a pilgrimage. She crossed the battlefield of urban noise and danger, carrying not just a puppy, but a message, that even in the wildest places, love finds a way. Every step she took was a line in a dramatic wildlife rescue. Every breath a verse in the gospel of animal and humanity. She climbed the fire escape slowly, one paw at a time, her body trembling from effort, but her soul lit with determination. The window was cracked open, the same path she used every morning, and now it became a doorway to hope. She pushed it open with her head, crawled through, and stepped into the sacred silence of home. The emotional true story had only just begun. The apartment was quiet, a soft lullaby of ticking clocks and the faint hum of city life beyond the glass. Inside, a small cardboard box in the corner held 4 tiny kittens, mewing softly in the warm nest of blankets their humans had prepared. As Ginger crossed the threshold with the strange puppy in her mouth, she paused, unsure if her own babies would accept this outsider. But love is not always logical. Sometimes it defies species, rules, and expectations. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. She gently placed the pup beside her kittens, who looked up with round, curious eyes. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The puppy opened his eyes, disoriented but no longer afraid. The kittens, unsure whether to hiss or welcome, shuffled closer, and then the miracle. One kitten reached out a paw, softly tapping the pup's ear. Another sniffed his face. Within moments, the 5 of them were tangled in a clumsy, joyful ball of fur and discovery. They didn't care that he barked instead of meowed. They didn't care that his ears were floppy and his scent unfamiliar. They played, they accepted. They became family. Ginger watched from the edge of the box, her body curled but her spirit alert. When her kittens began to whimper for food, she lay down and called to them with soft mews. They hurried to her, kneading and suckling. The puppy, confused, stayed back, unsure if he belonged. Hunger gnawed at him. But just when it seemed he might remain forgotten again, Ginger extended her paw and gently pulled him forward. One of her own had finished, and she nudged the pup into the empty space. He latched on hesitantly, then urgently. And she allowed it. In a world divided by differences, a cat let a dog nurse from her body. That's not just an animal miracle, that's a sermon in motion. A heartwarming animal video playing out live in the cradle of survival. The front door creaked open. Just as the little family settled into slumber, Jake and Emma stepped inside, arms filled with grocery bags and the weight of everyday life. They had no idea that a miracle had happened within their walls. Ginger's ears twitched at the sound of keys jingling and shoes tapping on the floor. "How was your day, honey?" Jake asked, his voice soft and tired. Emma smiled, walked into the kitchen, and the familiar crack of a can opener pierced the air. Ginger lifted her head but didn't move. She couldn't, not yet. Her gaze shifted to the pup sleeping among her kittens, their bodies wrapped around one another like puzzle pieces. "And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. And there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying." Emma called, "Come here, Ginger." Normally, the orange tabby would race toward her with joyful meows, but today something sacred held her back. Concern wrinkled Emma's face as she walked to the box. Her heart thudded in her chest as she knelt, expecting to find sickness or suffering. Instead, she gasped. There, in a nest meant for 4, lay 5, one of them unmistakably a dog. Emma's hand covered her mouth. Jake joined her moments. Later, his eyes wide with disbelief. Ginger looked up at them, unbothered, almost proud. Her gaze said it all. "He's ours now." Jake and Emma, both longtime supporters of local animal shelters, recognized the depth of what they were witnessing. Ginger herself had been rescued when she was pregnant, her previous owner unable to afford her care. Now she had become the rescuer. A viral YouTube story was unfolding in their living room, but to them it was more than content. It was confirmation. Confirmation that love knows no species, that rescue is not one-sided, that even the smallest among us can perform the greatest acts of compassion. They knelt beside the box, tears in their eyes as 5 tiny bodies breathed in unison. And in that moment, the city outside faded away. All that remained was the bond, unspoken, unconditional, eternal, between animals and humanity. The kitchen light spilled across the hardwood floor, casting a gentle glow over the box in the corner, a quiet nursery where innocence and miracles curled into sleep. Ginger, the orange tabby with a lioness's courage and a mother's soul, hovered protectively near the edge, her ears twitching with every small noise, her heart divided between fear and instinct. The aroma of wet food filled the room, and her hunger clawed at her stomach, but something deeper held her back. Uncertainty. Would Emma accept this? Would her human, her companion, her sanctuary, understand what had been done in the name of love? Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Even as doubt pressed against her ribs, the smell of food pulled stronger. With a flick of her tail and a quick backward glance at her precious babies, 4 kittens and 1 fragile interloper, she stepped forward. Emma, with quiet compassion, had already placed the bowl near the box, her body low, movements soft. Respecting the silent sanctity of this new family, Ginger ate hungrily, each bite a reminder of the strength she needed to protect, not just her own, but the one she had chosen. Emma, following the vet's advice, approached slowly. She'd been told to never force a moment, that Ginger's maternal instincts would decide what was allowed. With eyes full of warmth, she reached into the box to gently pet each kitten. Her fingers, brushing over soft fur and tiny purring bodies, 1, 2, 3, 4, but when she reached for a fifth head, her hand froze mid-air. Her brow furrowed, her breath caught. "Wait a minute," she whispered, a puzzled smile tugging at her lips before vanishing into confusion. Ginger had only given birth to 4 kittens. No toys, no visitors. No new animals had been introduced. Emma's heart began to race. The window, Ginger's walks. Could another animal have entered? Her mind spun. She slowly crouched, pulled out her phone, and turned on the flashlight, a beam of white light slicing through shadows. But what that light revealed was no shadow at all, it was truth. A furry truth with long ears and sleepy brown eyes, blinking. Up at her from the depths of the blanket. A dog, shock poured through Emma's body like ice water. Her hand trembled as she dropped the phone onto the floor, her voice cracking as she yelled, "Jake, get over here right now!" From the hallway came the thunder of feet. Jake, alarmed, hurried into the room, nearly slipping on the rug as he knelt beside his wife. "What's wrong?" he asked, scanning her face for signs of danger. Emma could barely point, her breath caught somewhere between awe and disbelief. Just then, Ginger, who had been eating, dashed back into the room, nudging her food. Bowl aside as if it were meaningless. Her eyes, wide and wild with maternal fire, locked on the box. She squeezed inside, positioning herself firmly in front of the tiny dog. "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God." Emma instinctively backed away, hands raised. She knew better than to get between a mother and her young, no matter their species. And what she saw next turned her confusion into reverence. The puppy, now fully awake, blinked sleepily, and then, like a flower opening to sunlight, crawled toward Ginger. He nestled into her orange fur, sighing softly as his little tail twitched in contentment. Jake and Emma watched, speechless. As two species defied every law of nature and every barrier of biology to forge a wild bond. The puppy didn't know he didn't belong, he only knew warmth. And Ginger didn't care that he was different. She only knew love. As he lay in the safety of her embrace, Jake dropped to his knees, eyes wide with wonder. "This isn't possible," he murmured. But the puppy, those tiny brown eyes full of trust, had no idea he was breaking the rules. He just wanted to be loved. Ginger's gaze darted to Emma, who reached out slowly. The puppy whimpered as she lifted him carefully, and for a moment he clung to her chest, curling into the cradle of her arms like he had known her his whole life. Ginger moved. Closer, her eyes pleading. She touched Emma's hand with her paw soft but commanding. "Return my baby," she seemed to say. And Emma obeyed. The puppy was lowered back into the box. And Ginger moved instantly, licking his head with slow, deliberate strokes, the universal language of motherhood. Jake leaned in, mouth still parted in amazement. He couldn't have gotten up that fire escape, he whispered, not by himself. And that's when it clicked, the answer to the unspoken question. Ginger had carried him. That small, helpless creature had been cradled between the teeth of a cat, transported across the concrete battlefield of the city, and carried up a metal staircase like a queen with her child. A dramatic wildlife rescue, not by rangers, not by shelters, but by a mother who saw no difference between fur and blood. "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." Jake stood up, pulled out his phone, and called the vet clinic where he worked. As a billing specialist, he didn't handle animals himself, but he knew who to ask. When the woman on the other end picked up, he got straight to the point. "Any missing puppies reported recently?" Her voice was tired but kind. "Not exactly," she said. "But we've had several found lately. Cardboard boxes, trash bins. One in a basket outside the shelter. Christmas is over." People realize puppies are work. Some don't want that responsibility. Jake's throat tightened. He looked at the dog curled in Ginger's fur and felt a sharp pang of sorrow. A life discarded, until Love scooped it up off the sidewalk. The vet's advice was firm. Bring the pup in. He needs a full examination. Jake hung up and told Emma. She nodded immediately, already reaching for the soft carrier they used for Ginger's vet visits. But as she approached the box again, something changed. Ginger's body stiffened, her tail lashed. And before Emma could touch the pup, Ginger let out a warning growl, low, feline, primal. When Emma extended her hand again, the cat swatted it away, not with claws, not to harm, but enough to make a point. You may love him, her eyes seemed to say, but he's mine. Do everything in love? Emma pulled her hand back, not angry, but moved. This wasn't defiance. This was devotion, and devotion isn't always gentle. It defends. It protects. But the reality was still there. The puppy couldn't stay without medical clearance. And Ginger, brave as she was, could not protect him from every illness, every threat. Emma looked at Jake. They both understood. Something had to be done. But it couldn't be forced. Ginger's heart had already claimed this pup. The next move had to be made with care, with wisdom, with love. The sun had started to dip just below the edge of the skyline, casting long amber shadows across the apartment's wooden floor. But inside, another kind of light had taken hold, the flickering, quiet glow of love being tested and forged in. The fire of instinct. The small dog, nestled in the folds of an old blanket, had no idea that his fate was still hanging in the balance. He only knew warmth. Ginger watched from her place beside him, her golden eyes steady, her body curled like a sentinel. The room was hushed, thick with a question that hovered in the air. What now? Emma stood nearby, torn between the bond she saw blooming before her and the very real risk it posed. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands. The foolish one tears hers down. The puppy, no matter how lovingly adopted, could carry something unseen, something that could put Ginger's kittens at risk. The responsible thing was clear. He had to be examined. But how do you take a child from a mother who doesn't understand what's happening? Emma had witnessed this scenario unfold many times during her years volunteering at the local animal shelter, the feral mothers, the ones who fought tooth and claw to keep their babies close. You didn't force separation. You found a way to make them come together? Emma remembered how the staff had lured mothers into carriers by letting their babies walk in first, usually using the promise of food. Now, she reached up to the pantry shelf and pulled down a familiar orange tube, Ginger's favorite. Pureed chicken cat treats. She peeled it open slowly, the scent wafting through the air like a silent bell ringing for supper. Ginger lifted her head. Her ears twitched. Scout, still unnamed, raised his little snout, mimicking the cat beside him. Emma knelt beside the carrier, cooing softly, placing the open treat just inside the entrance. Come on, little one, she whispered, heart pounding. The dog crept forward. One paw, two, the softest shuffle. Ginger rose and followed, her body low, her eyes locked on the snack and her baby. And when the last of her tail vanished into the carrier, Emma gently swung the door closed with a soft click. The bond between a dog and his feline mother stayed unbroken, sealed now in safety, animal rescue, human compassion. A miracle in motion, the carrier sat quietly in the back seat of the car as the city slid past the windows in streaks of gold and blue. Jake glanced over his shoulder every few minutes, his heart pulled tight by the strange silence. But inside that little plastic sanctuary, the mother and son curled into each other once more, just like they had in the cardboard box where fate had first tied their hearts together. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another. Above yourselves. When they arrived at the clinic, the vet tech already had the room prepped, having been briefed by Jake over the phone. She greeted them warmly, but paused when she saw the carrier. Even prepared, she hadn't expected the sight that greeted her when she opened the door. There they were, Ginger curled protectively around the tiny dog, their bodies knotted together. In sleep, it wasn't just a touching animal story. It was a holy sight. Her voice dropped to a reverent whisper as she reached in, gently lifting the dog from Ginger's embrace. The cat didn't stir. Her body sagged with exhaustion. She had crossed streets and fire escapes, weathered confusion and risk, fought off fear, and now, in the quiet arms of science and medicine, she finally rested. The vet examined the pup with care, her practiced hands moving over his thin frame, her face tightening with concern. He was no more than 6 weeks old, a German shepherd, far too young to be taken from his mother, underweight, lacking vital nutrients, but alive, miraculously alive. He shouldn't have survived this long, she murmured, looking up at Jake with awe. Whatever care he got before this, it saved him. Jake smiled and looked at Ginger. She did it. She's the reason. The vet nodded, emotion in her eyes. He'll need milk substitute, supplements, but yes, he'll live. And with the right care, he'll thrive. Jake's chest swelled with pride and relief. The bond between them was no longer just emotional, it was essential, life-saving. He looked down at the puppy, who had begun to lick his fingers with tiny, grateful kisses, and felt something shift inside him, while the veterinarian stepped away to get supplies. Jake cradled the small shepherd pup in his arms, already imagining life with him, the walks they'd take, the games he'd play with Ginger's kittens, the way this little survivor might grow into a strong, noble dog, with a heart full of loyalty. He would never forget the moment he decided, "We're keeping him," Jake whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "He belongs with us. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me." The vet returned, pleased by the decision, and admitted that the shelter was at capacity, not a single cage left, not a single hand available to offer the kind of individual care this pup would need. Socialization, the vet emphasized, was critical. He needs a family. One that sees him not as a problem to fix, but as a soul to nurture. Jake nodded. He already has that. As the vet packed formula samples and outlined feeding routines, Jake looked at the shaggy brown fur and thought about what to name this tiny miracle, and then it came to him. Scout, like the ones who go ahead, who face the unknown before the rest. The brave, the loyal, the ones who survive. His name is Scout, Jake said softly, holding the pup close. Just then, Ginger stirred in the carrier. Her eyes blinked open, and when she realized her baby wasn't beside her, she let out a desperate, loud meow that echoed through the room. Jake didn't hesitate. He opened the carrier door and placed Scout back beside her. She immediately scooped him into her embrace and began grooming him with long, loving strokes, cleaning away the scent of antiseptic, reaffirming the bond that no distance could erase. A wild bond, a miracle in fur. The ride home felt lighter. There was no fear now, only hope. And when they reached the apartment, Ginger stepped out of the carrier first, Scout dangling from her mouth like he had so many times before, not by birth, but by choice. The kittens squealed with joy, their tails flicking and bodies tumbling as Scout rejoined them in their cardboard kingdom. Jake sat on the floor beside Emma, who had tears in her eyes as he told her everything, the vet's concern, the diagnosis, the good news, and the decision they had both silently agreed to. Scout was family now. Let all that you do be done in love. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and Scout thrived. Ginger fed him, groomed him, disciplined him, Emma cuddled him. Jake trained him. The kittens became his siblings. And soon enough, the little German shepherd who once trembled in a box became a strong, playful 1-year-old dog with eyes full of gratitude and a heart bursting with joy. His beginning had been tragic, his path uncertain. But his rescue had been extraordinary, not just by humans, but by the one he least expected. A mother cat. A miracle named Ginger. A reminder that love has no species, no borders, no rules. Just heart. Just action. And if this story has stirred your soul, if it's reminded you of the power of kindness, the wild magic of maternal love, and the beauty that blooms when we choose compassion, then let us know. Would you have adopted Scout too? Share your thoughts in the comments, like the video. Subscribe to this channel for more true animal rescue stories that prove again and again, love is the greatest survival tool we have. Love has no boundaries. Sometimes the family we need finds us when we least expect it. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story. Stay kind, stay wild.